YouTube, the amazing platform that it is, has randomly been unsubscribing people from content creators' channels. So if you were subscribed, please check to see if you still are. And if you're new here, welcome! Thank you all for being patient in these troubling times, and I apologize for the inconvenience to all of you. And unlike Dante's empty Coliseum Rumble with Garyon, I'm glad you guys are here to enjoy the show.
The thing about starting any piece of entertainment with a line from a poem is that no matter what your story is about, if you look hard enough, you can find a poem that relates to it. It isn't impressive and just comes off as trying too hard to look intelligent. It's like Capcom doesn't want to admit how cheesy its stories are.
Dude, this clearly has less to do with the fact that they were looking for a poem to complete this metaphor, and more that a crucial concept behind the plot was the poem. It's like you don't want to admit how boring your narration is, which is probably why they confuse me for you. Wait a minute.
You might think you two would stand around gawking at a giant hell tree that just erupted from a city street, but keep in mind, this is a world where this isn't the first time this has happened. The timid Negro did the same thing years ago in Devil May Cry 3, and what followed was a demon invasion.
Except that all the people in the residential area where the timid Negro ascended, yes, that's what the region is called because the city hasn't officially been given a name, were turned into demons, so this entire argument is rendered moot. And to top it off, this isn't even the same city. Do you even research?
What am I doing wasting my time here? He's got this.
I agree completely, Nero, but apparently you require 2 games where the torch is passed to you.
Dante doesn't pass him the torch, he acknowledges Nero's worth as a devil hunter. The only thing he passes him is Yamato and a neon sign that says Devil May Cry. Your comment tells me that you either didn't beat Devil May Cry 4 or completely ignored Nero's character development for that game.
I've got a score to settle with that son of a bitch.
Nero is going to feel real bad about calling his grandmother a bitch later.
And that is a sin of the game. How?
There's nothing we can do. We must go.
There's nothing we can do. So let's leave, then turn around once you get a prosthetic arm and come right back. Only then can we make a difference.
V has been manipulating both Nero and Dante since the beginning. Besides, have you never heard of a strategic retreat?
How much of a hipster do you have to be to have a jukebox in your van? And wouldn't the record constantly skip from the movement?
What do you think is going to be the result of a teenager who looks up to Dante?
Nico isn't wearing a seatbelt, so she would be thrown all over the inside of her van as it does a complete mid-air 360. Also, every single piece of equipment inside the van would be thrown all over the place, but it's in perfect order when she parks.
Dude, you are reading way too much into this. With your reasoning, we'd be questioning the validity of physics in every scene.
In fact, let's just send the van itself for surviving everything it goes through over the course of this game.
And yet let me continue sinning it after the fact.
Just in case you missed our joke about smoking written on the road, we've made sure you'll miss it by covering it up with on-screen text.
We live in an era of various radical movements who will use any opportunity to use the law against decent citizens. Gotta cover yourself always now.
Kyrie is actually relegated to the kitchen for this entire game. She never once appears on screen.
Was that a woman in the kitchen joke? Ugh. Also, why don't you tell me how much she accomplished last game? Go on, I'll wait.
Hoods and cloaks are never worn by anyone except when their identity needs to be concealed from the audience, not the person they are interacting with. Nero wouldn't recognize Virgil since he's never met him before.
This is clearly a callback to Virgil's campaign in the special edition of Devil May Cry 4. It makes it rather easy to figure out who he is. This aesthetic was an artistic decision, not just for secrecy. Fans of the series will know who this is, and newcomers will enjoy learning about who this is.
Get back inside now!
It's good to see that their relationship is still built on knowing each other's names and screaming it from time to time.
How is this a sin?
I wonder if Dante is regretting letting Nero keep the Yamato now.
Still not a sin.
That's it. No more wheels from here.
This becomes one stupid line later, because Nico has no issue driving this van onto rooftops and even hell itself.
Dude, are you even looking at the screen right now? Even if she were to back up, would you rather she spent time wandering around on borrowed time, mind you, trying to find out where the hell to go while Nero just sits in the van? I suppose you would, because then you can find more ways to sit in the van again and again.
There's probably no answer to this question, but how does Nico leave more arms for Nero all over the levels when she hasn't even been there herself? And why does she make Nero pay for arms inside the van, but then leave them lying around at no charge?
The same way most shooters have ammo lying around everywhere, and the girl's gotta eat too. So this question does have an answer.
Guess the phone still works.
Took you long enough, dumbass.
Did taking cell phones never occur during the planning for this mission? Nero and V both have to rely on payphones to call Nico.
Your previous sin regarding nukes is easily explained here. We have telephone booths, but no cell phones, so it's not that hard to come to the conclusion that nukes don't exist either.
So what happened to no more wheels from here?
Dartigan sins the Ven, which is a running gag cliché.
V is a kill stealer.
Nero didn't seem to mind. Of course, if you showed your audience more of the clip, you'd realize V killed Goliath to prevent him from revealing his secrets.
I expect he's not much more than glyphosate pollen by now.
A what?
Glyphosate. It's a tree that grows in the underworld. It thrives on human blood and...
So you guys have been planning this counterattack for a month and you never once told Nero about the tree and what it does?
Making a lot of assumptions here. Just because he's working with V now doesn't mean they've been planning. Clearly from this scene, he doesn't even know anything about V's fighting style or what he even is. And V is keeping all the knowledge to himself. Not only that, but Nero does have a life outside of devil hunting. And on a separate note in the novel, V and Nero agree to meet up in a month because V believed the world would be ending around that time. So he decided to help as many people as possible, while Nero needed that time frame to go train in Fortuna, which he does. It also explains your previous sin of why V got there before Nero. This is why the books matter.
The amount of callbacks to previous games is too damn high. 1 or 2 is perfectly fine. But when you have lines, enemies, bosses, and then later on the entire plot being a callback to Devil May Cry 3, it's taking things from cute to retread territory.
Okay, but these demons weren't even from Devil May Cry 3. They were from the original game. Good try, though.
Devil May Cry 5's boob rendering technology is 5 years behind Metro Last Light, and this sin is probably a bit outdated now that Metro Exodus is out, but until I get to that one, it remains in place.
You need to find yourself a girl, mate.
Gilgamesh was shooting his laser at an angle, and I assume that made the ground collapse under V. However, the whole V fell down implies that the blast did way more damage, because that is deep. Either that or the city covered up a sinkhole in the worst way imaginable.
There is an entire subfloor underneath here, as you see in the next mission. Please leave the analysis of architecture to the engineers.
If the Devil Sword Sparta still exists, it may very well be our only hope.
Trish brought the Sword of Sparta with her when they fought Urizen the first time, and it didn't do them much good.
The Sword of Sparta is still the best option they have, and V wants Nero to wield it because in different hands it could be more useful. Otherwise, why would Trish throw it to Dante in the battle with Urizen if the sword was just as strong in her hands?
You can't travel through here in a car.
There is nowhere this van cannot go. It makes me wonder why they ever get out of it.
This is a hack and slash adventure. For someone who's missed the series, it sounds like you'd rather be playing GTA 5.
You have to wonder what it's like having the job of determining what is and isn't an acceptable level of ass crack.
See, it's saying this kind of stuff that makes people think gamers are just a bunch of incels.
Once inside the Clypod tree, the level design takes a noticeable dip. With long hallways that look exactly the same and vertical ledge drop after ledge drop, it even finds time to add a little of Devil May Cry's biggest weakness, platforming.
What the hell are you talking about, dude? Devil May Cry has always had platforming sections, and I've never seen any comments where people had a problem with that mission's stage design. That's just your opinion. Just like it's my opinion that this sin is bull.
Nero is going to go home to Kyrie when this is over with some interesting new fetishes.
Dartigan makes a sex joke that isn't a sin of the game cliché.
Hey, douchebag. Miss me?
The last time you fought Urizen, he stomped your ass hard. It's been a month and the only difference between then and now is you have a prosthetic arm. I can see why your confidence was sky high.
It's more than that. Nero is stronger now after training for a month alongside his new prosthetic arm. Also, bravado is a part of Nero's personality, just like making sex jokes is a part of yours.
Your reason, huh? I bet your parents didn't like you much, 'cause your name sucks.
Yeah, it's not ironic enough. Go read the Kabbalah or some Gnostic grimoires and pick something from that.
This coming from the guy who named himself Dartigan.
I am power. Absolute.
Urizen, as he is now, seems way stronger than what he becomes later.
Well, duh.
That was the point.
Urizen could have killed Dante a month ago, but did the villain thing of letting their foe live for no reason. Now Dante's back and more powerful than ever. This is not the first time Urizen, or Virgil if you want to be accurate, has made this exact same mistake when it comes to Dante in this series.
Virgil's demonic half has always been arrogant, and even in the manga that takes place prior to Devil May Cry 3, he did the same thing, which shows that Virgil hasn't changed throughout these years, making his change of heart more impactful.
See, she wants to invite you to her birthday party, but your phone is disconnected.
Dante really needs a cell phone.
Cell phones don't exist here, as no evidence is given throughout these series of games, and even if they did, who's gonna pay for it? You?
First, Why would Dante need to cover his eyes with a magazine when his power is off? Second, why does Dante even have a woman's tabloid magazine in his office? And third, why did he take it with him to fight Urizen? Since Nero finds the same magazine inside the Clypod tree right outside Urizen's throne room.
In summary, he fell asleep reading it. He wanted to read it, and he wanted to pass the time getting there by reading it. Capacity to sin game for ridiculous reasons. Neutralized.
I got a gig. Cash up front.
Cash up front. This I like.
The cash up front part makes no sense once you learn the job was from V, who was only born 2 days ago and has no money.
Must be a nice world you live in where thieves don't exist.
Oh my god, tonight's my birthday party. Yeah, I'm turning 18. Not a little kid.
That's incredibly creepy.
Dartigan sins something that is not a sin of the game cliché.
This demon got a name?
The camera cuts away from this flashback before V can pronounce the demon's name, but his lips were pretty clearly forming a V sound and not a U, so I'm pretty confident Dante went into this knowing that he would be fighting his brother Virgil again. For no reason at all, they decided to hide this fact from Lady and Trish, who went with Dante to stop Virgil. And then V continued to hide that fact after everything went wrong.
Dante and Virgil have always kept things concerning themselves on a need-to-know basis. They're kind of like that. V hides this fact purposefully as he was afraid they would kill him if they knew who he was. And the only reason he tells Trish later is because at this point, if Urizen isn't stopped, it's the end of the human world. Not to mention he appealed to Trish as a child to their mother. Also, don't want to be that guy, but it's spelled Virgil.
Nico and the van continue to survive this abuse.
Dartigan continues to sin a concept over and over again.
How do we explain Dante being missing for over a month? He was just unconscious until V found him and threatened to kill him.
He was in a coma, and V had to shock him awake. Were you cooking or something while cutscenes were playing?
Dante has been impaled on a sword more times than I care to count. He's pretty much immune to it. You can't trick me, game.
Yeah, stabbed in the chest and mainly with his own weapon. Not with the devil sword Sparta, and certainly not in the head.
You need to hide, Dante. No matter what happens, you mustn't leave.
Your house is on fire and you thought hiding Dante in the closet was a good idea?
There are God knows how many demons attacking this place, so she clearly thought he'd be safer inside the house. And judging from the result, it was the best decision.
If you could defeat Urizen, then I never would have dreamed of using that child.
In an earlier flashback, V revealed to Dante that Urizen is Virgil. So why use the fake name Urizen with Dante now?
Remember, Itsuno is still trying to rake in new players by being subtle with V and Urizen's identity. And the game hints that Dante was suspicious of V having some relation to Virgil, similar to how he felt about Nero in the 4th game. Still, I'll let you have this one since it's not communicated very well. See, you can do a good job when you actually try.
First come, first serve on the targets, right?
Music to my ears. Hurry up, Dante.
Dante really shouldn't let Trish and Lady run ahead of him to fight Urizen first, since he already heard from V that Urizen is Virgil.
Dante couldn't be sure if V was telling the truth or if he may be mistaken. If he knew it was Virgil, which he's only sure of after he enters the Clyphod chambers, and how powerful Virgil was at this point, he still doesn't have the authority to order Trish or Lady around as they are his business partners. Of course, the opposite can also be argued. He knew how strong Urizen is, especially since Morrison told him and required the help of his allies.
This makes the 3rd time I fought Urizen sitting on his throne. So let's go ahead and throw in a repeating boss fight sin. I was saving that sin for the boss rush that traditionally occurs near the end of Devil May Cry games, but this is the one game where that doesn't happen.
2 out of 3 battles with Urizen ended halfway or by the game requiring you to fail, not to mention you play as 2 different characters, thereby changing the experience. Clever, you are not.
Dante must have to work hard to repress his Oedipus complex, since Trish was made to look like his mother.
Did you even understand the story of Oedipus? He didn't know that Jocasta was his mother when he married her. Also, Dartigan makes a sex joke that isn't a sin of the game cliché.
Take care of Trish for me.
Dante was going to leave a naked Trish in the middle of the road until V showed up.
He only decides to leave when he sees V, then gives him the responsibility of looking after Trish.
Where did V find that modesty blanket to cover Trish?
What is it with you and naked women? You are one thirsty dude, my man.
In order to defeat his younger brother, he could only do one thing with the crumbling flesh and feelings. He needed to separate man from devil with the strength of the Yamato.
Since V already shared this info with Dante earlier, why has he been so secretive with it until now? It apparently doesn't matter if people know the truth about him and Virgil, so the only reason for the secrecy was to keep the player in the dark.
He didn't share the origins of his birth with Dante, only that Urizen was Virgil. Even in the book he never tells him out of fear for his life. What the hell are you on about?
I'm not your mommy, V.
Well, that situation is complicated. V is the human half of Virgil, and Trish was made in the image of Virgil and Dante's mother.
Dartigan has done an excellent job of padding this in count.
Over the years, I've been stabbed and jabbed by a number of things. But who would have ever guessed?
Dante didn't know his family home was still intact under the Clypod tree, and he certainly didn't need to stab himself in this location with the Broken Rebellion to activate the Sin Devil mode. He could have done that right after V woke him up if that was the plan.
There was no plan. He was wondering on how to defeat Urizen and needed a place to think. It's here he figured out that while Yamato was meant to separate, Rebellion was meant to unify, and that's why he stabs himself.
Urizen is what I like to call power level strong. His strength is incredibly generic and he's capable of defeating main characters just because the plot calls for it. There is nothing about the way he fights that makes him a bigger threat than some of the other demons Dante has fought over the series.
Urizen doesn't use most of his powers because his opponents are that much weaker than he is. It's like if you used all of your strength to stomp on an ant, then jump on it, then pull out a flamethrower and burn it. Also, how many Devil May Cry game bosses do you know of that are sitting in a chair attacking? No, we do not talk about that game.
Where'd that garbage god go? What is Urizen after?
There is no reason for Dante to keep calling Urizen by that name at this point. Even the game has given up the twist.
At this point, we can confirm that Dante knew V is Virgil's human half, so it's to differentiate between V and Urizen. Otherwise, it would be Virgil and Virgil.
Whoa, you are the infamous Dante. I'm Nicoletta Goldstein.
All of the women who are into Dante have one thing in common. He killed their father.
Trish looks like his mother, no evidence of anything other than a business partnership or friendship between him and Lady, and Nico is acting more akin to a fangirl. So that leaves all of the women into Dante at a grand total of 0.
Is there any reason Lady and Trish are stuck watching the van with Nico? They are badasses in their own right.
Did either of them manage to even scratch Urizen? Because Dante and Nero definitely did. And don't even mention V because he clearly has his own reasons for going.
If there is one weakly written character in this story, it's Malphas. First she wanted the Sword of Sparta, then she tried to strip V of his demon familiars, then tries to kill V directly before being killed by Nero.
Malphas, like any demon under Urizen's rule, obeys him and will do everything to protect their ruler.
V may be crumbling to dust, but he could still send his demons to help Nero fight Malphas.
V's body would have fell apart long ago if not for the familiars that he made a pact with. Not only has his body been deteriorating since then, V is nowhere near the level of a powerful demon like Malphas, which is why he avoids a confrontation with Elder Genryon Knight in her presence.
I remember stinky little pooch just like you.
This is a case where the repeated boss fight spans across 2 games.
The only similarity is the name. The boss fight and the weapon obtained function very differently. This is what happens when you use a bunch of holy waters against bosses.
The thing you don't know is, she tried to save you too. She kept searching and searching. Until I killed her.
And this would have been an excellent thing to mention to Virgil back in Devil May Cry 3.
They were different people back then, younger and more immature. Not to mention the topic of discussion never arose. Interestingly enough, in Devil May Cry 3, the brothers ponder over the actions of their father, while in this game they ponder over the actions of their mother.
Virgil is about to eat that apple and become the king of assholes.
That's ridiculous.
The Brothers of Blood disagree on the very reason of their existence. They must fight.
You see, Nero, they kind of have a heavy-handed Cain and Abel analogy.
How is that a sin?
Virgil gained a bit of a dad bod. He looks like he's about to ask to speak with the manager.
Dartigan points out things on screen and adds them as sins.
Heal your wounds, Dante. Get strong. After that, we'll settle the matter.
The matter has been settled twice before, though. First in Devil May Cry 3 and then again in the original game. Virgil seems to be the type who continues to call for a new game until he wins and doesn't count his losses.
This is the ratio of wins and losses between Virgil and Dante. Therefore, they are tied and the matter is not settled. Even then, it doesn't matter because Virgil is talking about the here and now battle, not from decades ago. Besides, isn't it already established that Virgil doesn't take losing well? Dartigan points out facts and sends them cliché.
He's your father!
I'm kind of disappointed that it wasn't the guy who looked like a Star Wars character who mentioned this to Nero.
Who the hell are you even talking about? Also, Dartigan sends something he doesn't like.
Now he needs an ass kicking. But I can't have you go kill your old man.
Dante sure does offer to kill people's fathers for them a lot.
Dartigan continues to pad the sin count.
None of the nations of the world see this and are launching the nukes.
See sin 19.
That day, if our positions were switched, would our fates be different?
Generally, yes. Switching who experienced what will change the outcome.
Not necessarily. Virgil is thinking about their reasons for what they are. While yes, a person can change depending on what they experience in life, their ultimate motivating factor is not determined by experience alone. This scene is signifying a chain in Virgil's perspective that ultimately leads to his confrontation with Nero, which brings about a change in his purpose. Good job completely missing the point.
My dumbass brother's back and I'm gonna rip him a new one.
Virgil's... how?
I don't know, Trish. Maybe it had something to do with what V told you about himself and Urizen being two halves of the same person.
Trish wasn't there, so obviously she will ask how. As you mentioned before, V tricked Dante into allowing the merger.
Made it for Lady and she paid for it, so consider it a rental.
Hey, you can't just...
Okay, we'll take care of that later.
I mean, it's not as if she's going to get to use it in this game.
If they live, they are still going to have expenses to pay.
How many times have we fought?
Hard to say. It's the only memory I have of us since we were kids.
That one time in DMC, though, doesn't count.
Dartigan adds a sin to this game for another game.
Nero is my son. Yeah, dumbass. You can't remember through that thick skull of yours?
Well. That was a long time ago.
Any discussion of Nero's mother, perhaps? Or are you saving that for the next game? Because I honestly can't see Virgil sleeping with anyone but himself.
She was a no-name prostitute who you know something about had you read any of the books.
I couldn't protect Credo. To this day, I hate myself for not having enough strength.
Oh yeah, that memorable character. Who would have guessed Credo's death left such a lasting impression on Nero that it would drive him to keep both Virgil and Dante from killing each other?
While I admit Devil May Cry 4 does a terrible job at conveying the brotherhood between Credo and Nero, the book does explain it, and that's exactly what they were. Brothers.
Demon puberty.
What the fuck?
Whatever you call yourself, Dante's not gonna die here. And neither are you.
I hate to break it to you, Nero, but you seem to have forgotten that your dad is responsible for the deaths of untold thousands of people, and this isn't even the first time he's done that. I think some punishment is warranted.
Do these people act like morally outstanding citizens?
If I beat Nero, then by default, I beat you. Agreed, Dante?
Whatever. I don't really care. I'm just gonna sit this one out.
Dante is too old for this weeb shit, and that's saying something.
Dartigan points out something happening on screen.
We need to sever the Clifod roots from the underworld itself. Then we'll seal the portal with the Yamato.
Hang on. If you do that, you can't come back.
Both Virgil and Dante have been trapped in the underworld and supposedly couldn't come back, but then they did.
You make it sound like there's only a handful of portals to the underworld. This is untrue, otherwise how would any demons make it to the human world in the first place? Not to mention, we've seen portals being made in the anime, and you should be well aware of the construction of the Hellgates in Devil May Cry 4. So yeah, you can create portals too. The only time someone was trapped in the underworld was Dante in Devil May Cry 2. Not even Capcom wants to talk about that game.
You aren't fooling me, Capcom. Even you don't believe Nero can carry the franchise on his own without Dante.
Itsuno himself has said this is the final tale in the Sons of Sparta saga. Dante and Virgil's story is complete. There is literally nothing more to be said. I mean, they're already so old. What more can be done with them?
So, how's it feel?
How's what feel?
Saving the man who killed your own father.
Dialogue that ironically turns the same question back on the one who originally asked the cliché.
Dartigan points out things happening on screen and sends them. Do you see how often this happens?